We're going to set up the body in the standing position, ready to do Pilates. So first of all, have a little wiggle, loosen everything up, and then stand strong. We're going to firstly plant our feet into the ground. So planting all four corners of the feet into the floor, supporting yourself through the heels and the toes. Feet should be hip width apart, toes, knees, hips all facing forwards. From here, we can now think about posture, and we're going to stretch and stand up as tall as we possibly can. Think about a piece of string pulling you up through the center of your head, and the spine is growing longer all the time. Tailbone pointing down into the floor while the string pulls you up through the head. Next, let's stabilize our shoulders. So roll those up and then melt your shoulder blades together into a V shape down your back. Hold these in position here. Next, we'll find our neutral spine. So imagine you've got a bowl of water in your pelvis, and we're going to tip and tilt that forwards and backwards. So from the side, it looks like you're rocking and rolling. Fill a bit of water out of the bowl as you go forwards and backwards. Gradually make this action smaller and smaller until you find the central position where you're no longer spilling any water and it's nicely balanced out. Hold all these positions and let's move on to focusing on engaging our core muscles. The pelvic floor first. From the pubic bone, zip up your pelvic floor as far as it will come up and release it to 30%. So you've just got a little bit of tension in there. Next, engage your TVA, the great big muscle that wraps around your center. This is your deepest core muscle, and we're going to engage it by pulling the belly button out through the back. Once again, release that until you only hold it at 30%. So we've got a manageable amount of tension. Finally, let's work on our lateral thoracic breathing. So big, deep breaths into the sides of the rib cage. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth if you can. And keep all of this going now into your exercises. So this is all about setting up the base supine position. We want to come down onto the floor, lying on your back, which is supine. Bend the knees so that the feet are flat on the floor and the knees are pointing straight up to the roof. You want to keep the legs hip width, so imagine a tennis ball always stuck between your knees. From here, we need to stretch our spine as long as possible. We're really tall from head to tailbone. Just make sure that you're resting comfortably on the back of the head, that it's not pushed back or curled through too much. You can always place a pillow or a yoga block under your head for support. Once you've set all this up, let's think about shoulder stability. So we're going to draw our shoulders down into the ground and pull the blades down towards your hips. Once we've stabilized the shoulders, let's find the neutral spine. So here we can tip and tilt the pelvis forwards and backwards. Tilting the pelvis so you can feel the gap come and go under your lower back. Another way to do this is to imagine you've got a bowl of water on your stomach, and as you tip and tilt, you're spilling water over the edge. So gradually find central position by bringing the action smaller and smaller. And when you get that central position, just check that you're not arched, you're not pressed down into the floor. You should be able to get a couple of sheets of paper under your lower back. Remember that this neutral spine position will be totally different for everybody. So go with what's natural for you. Next, we need to engage our core muscles. So we'll start with our pelvic floor, zipping up from the pubic bone up towards the belly button, pulling all the muscles between the legs upwards. When you've gone as far as possible, let those release slowly to 50% and then to 30% and hold it at 30%. We'll work on our TVA next, the transverse abdominis muscle. So this is the one that wraps all the way around your middle. We're going to pull the belly button down through our spine into the ground. Release it, 50%, and then to 30%. So we've now got both of our core muscles engaged at that 30%. Nice and strong in a position where we should be able to hold it for quite a while. The last part of our setup here is our lateral thoracic breathing. This is where we're going to focus on taking the air into the rib cage, into the lungs, with deep breaths in and out. And remember, the air is coming into the sides and the back of the rib cage, filling up the lungs and the rib cage area, and then letting it go out. So in this position, if your core is engaged, the lower part of your stomach should stay fairly flat, while it's the chest that will rise and fall and expand to the sides and back. We now keep all of this going until we're ready to begin our exercises. This is our 4-point setup position. So we're on all fours, hands and knees, trying to make sure that our wrists are directly under the shoulders and our knees directly under the hips. So once again, we're stretching from head to tailbone, making sure the head doesn't pop up or down too far, but that the neck stays in quite a straight line. We also then want to stabilize our shoulders. So pulling the shoulder blades down and together along the back of the spine. Let's find neutral spine. Tip and tilt the pelvis. And finally, make the action smaller until you get the central position. There's no arch, no rounding, just that neutral position through the lower back. Engage the core muscles. So pull up the pelvic floor, pull in the TVA, and then release those to 30%. Keep holding them in that position while you work through your lateral thoracic breathing. So we're coming with deep, big breaths in and out into the rib cage area. And then we keep all of this going into our exercises. This is the sitting setup position. So if you can sit on the floor. If not, if it's not too comfortable, then you can always sit on a block or prop yourself on a cushion. So it's best to prop yourself up rather than have to lie back or struggle, okay? So we want to be able to sit on our sit bones nice and tall. You can have the legs out long. It normally depends on which exercises you're doing. So long legs, or you might prefer them in the diamond position. It's up to you. So once we're comfortable on our sit bones, stretch the spine tall. Piece of string pulling you up through the center of the head, tailbone pushing down into the floor to anchor you. When we've got tall, let's stabilize the shoulders. Roll them up and then slide the shoulder blades together down the back. And we'll keep them here. Next, we engage the core muscles. So pulling up the pelvic floor and belting in the TVA. As far as they'll go to begin with. And again, just letting them out until they get to 30%. So it's a manageable place to hold them. We complete this all with our lateral thoracic breathing. So really deep breaths into the sides of the ribs. And we keep it going into your exercises. This is the prone setup position. So we come down onto our front. Our legs are stretched long, about hip width apart, and our nose is straight down to the floor. So we want our neck to be stretched long, making sure that our head isn't tipped back or forward. You may find that you want to use a yoga block or a cushion to support your forehead. So once again, we're stretching from head to toe and tailbone, making sure our back and our spine are lengthened. Next, we're stabilizing the shoulders. So pulling the blades down the back of the spine and drawing the shoulder blades together. So it creates the V shape through the blades. From here, again, find your neutral spine. So you might want to tip and tilt the pelvis until you get that central position again. You can also make sure that once you've engaged your core by pulling up the pelvic floor, belting in your TVA, keep those at 30%. And here you can imagine you've got a drawing pin under your belly button. So you mustn't let the belly fall and prick the skin. You can always think about a Malteser. So the chocolate will melt if you let the core fall on it. Just ideas to help you keep that core engagement. Lastly, we'll focus on our lateral thoracic breathing. So deep breaths into the sides and the back of the rib cage. Just hold the position and keep everything going like this into your exercises. Here we have our side lying setup position. So coming down onto one side, we usually use, if you can manage it, one arm to support the head. If this isn't comfortable, you can take the arm out in front and use a block or a cushion to support your head. Just making sure that the head isn't up or down, but the spine comes through the neck in a lovely straight position. Some exercises will need your knees bent up in front of you. Some exercises will need the legs stretched out long. Whichever position you're using, the core and the setup position is still the same. So let's stretch our spine long from head to tailbone. Stabilizing the shoulders is just the same. We pull both the blades together into that V shape down the back. Now, because you're on your side, try not to let the top shoulder fall forwards or backwards, but keep the shoulders stacked on top of each other, which means the top shoulder should always be directly above the bottom shoulder. Your arm can rest on top of your side. Some exercises will make you put it in the air, or if you're feeling a little bit wobbly, you can always support yourself without drooping, but just keep the fingertips on the floor for a little bit of balance. So we've stretched the spine, we've got our balance and shoulder stability. We need to find the neutral spine. So just remember, if you have your knees bent up in front, that you're not curling up into the fetal position. You do want a straight spine and the neutral position. Again, if you want to tip and tilt the pelvis forward and back, just come until you find that central position where you're not arched, you're not rounded. Remember, it's different for everybody, that neutral position. We also then need to engage our core muscles. So the pelvic floor pulls up, the TVA pulls in. You've got that strong tension in the core, and then release it to 30% where we'll manage to hold it. On our side, we just want to check we're not falling into the floor, so we're not sagging into the ground. Try and keep engaged and imagine that you can fit a piece of paper underneath the side you're lying on, and that will help to keep your spine in the stretched long position rather than sagging and drooping into the floor on that lower side. Finally, to finish off, let's think about our lateral thoracic breathing. So deep breaths in and out of the rib cage. And let's keep all this going until we've gone on through our exercises.